I've just been playing my own music for over 20 years, and then Noah approached me with the opportunity to play with Scott and himself, and I was really felt the music on a deep level, and it's been good ever since.
I've been playing music with Scott with Neurosis for more than 20 years now. And throughout that time, we often have little side projects and different ways that we want to make music that are different from what we do with Neurosis. And we've always had that. And Scott and I have I think a similar appreciation for simple but powerful, heavy music that isn't necessarily loud. You know, there's ways that you could be really heavy and very emotional without turning up the volume. And so I think this is sort of an extension of that, and of the, just sort of finding different paths, different modes of expressing what we feel and what we do with our music. And Scott has been playing, these solo things by himself with the acoustic guitar, playing these songs that just tear your heart out, up there by himself. And he has a couple albums of that. And he played me some recordings of new songs. And I just had a river of ideas come through of ways to add some instrumentation, subtle layers to make the music just more dynamic. And I just told him my ideas, and he said yes. He said, yes, let's do that. And he calls me a little bit later and he says, do you know anyone who plays the slide? And I said, I'll find out. And I live with Greg. And I was like, Greg,
yeah,
want to learn how to play the slide? And he jumped in and figured out some nice parts. And then we sort of developed this album that we did last year.
You figure out immediately that a less is more approach is the only thing that's going to work. So you come up with a part, keep it super simple, and then maybe even cut that part in half so it doesn't step on anything, and there's room for it's all about leaving room for what Scott's doing to really come through, and we just sort of decorate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're like,
yeah, I've always liked everything, so even when we were young and it was not cool to have your Neil Young records out, I always had my, punk rock records, Neil Young records, Townes Van Zandt albums, Led Zeppelin albums. I didn't really care what anybody thought about the music I listened to, and then later I just discovered more and more people.
I started my first punk rock band when I was 15 years old. It was called Christ on Parade, and we were kind of a political hardcore band from California in 1985. And by the time I was 16, I had an album and a US tour. And that band, we came to Europe in 1988, and I was 19 then. So that's kind of like part of my transition from youth to becoming an adult. That band and Neurosis were like brother bands. And when my band dissolved and Neurosis needed somebody to join on the keyboards, they asked me. And so we have a very, very long history, Scott and I, of being young punk rockers together. And I think that we just kind of always had a very expansive view of music, and it just got more and more broad as the years go by, as we hear more and more things. And I think, you know, at some point you just get to a place as an adult where you're no longer this kid who's like against everything that you could point at, you know, and you actually sort of open yourself up to all the beautiful ways that people express themselves through music. You know, I think for us, driving across the country for months and months and months, like we did with Neurosis, we listened to a lot of American music, a lot of Johnny Cash, and you know, Hank Williams, and you know, there's a lot of classic rock and a lot of, you know, things that sort of emanates out like that. But you know,
Good music is good music.
and one thing that we discovered together, you know, with our shared music collection at home, is that it never runs out. There's always something new that you can hear about and discover and dig through the record bins at the store and find. And, you know, we've been doing this obsessively, devouring music of all different kinds. And it never runs out. It's kind of the beautiful thing about it. I think both things influence each other, just in the way that we've come to learn what we can do. You know, we're always searching. We're never still with our music, with Neurosis or with Scott's music. But I don't know that there's a direct influence that one style of music has on the other. They're both sort of happening at the same time. They're both sort of sharing the same spirit. So in some ways, they're just born connected. I would say that the road home, it starts with what's in Scott's heart. And I think that with Neurosis, that's true as well, but it's more of a shared spirit and a shared feeling between all of us. But this band is really, it starts with one place, and then it grows from that root and becomes, you know, the full plant or tree.
Yeah, I'm playing in a band currently called the Night Falls. Yeah, we've been touring a lot, but we're making our first record, so I come home and we mix that, and then we'll be taking some time off, so we'll concentrate on that.
Touring is it's mentally difficult sometimes to find the things that you need to make that happen. One is you need to find a quiet, calm space. And the other is that you need to find a private space to be able to kind of like focus in and sort of exercise that creative ability. And tour is kind of, it's those we're always surrounded by somebody, you know, and oftentimes it's a noisy room. But and then when we do find a little quiet, I think we just try to like be grateful for the moment. And so we don't always jump in and start working on something new, but we always want to, we always intend to. We talk about it before we get in the van. Like this time we're gonna, you know, use all that time during the day when we're waiting. But it's honestly, it's kind of difficult.
We did do a little bit in Australia. We wrote a little bit there, and were able to record Scott's parts in Australia for the 7-inch that we're sort of promoting right now. So, but not a lot of time. He's right. Yeah, we're talking about what needs to happen when they get back. But you know, it's a good band, but it's not on the level of a Neurosis or anything like that. We're just starting out again. For me, my third or fourth band. So
Scott is the one who's very busy and on tour a lot. And when he's home, he has family and children. And it's often difficult to get his time. And so Greg and I, since we live together, we do a lot of homework. And, you know, I like to think that we're sort of, as musicians, we're these solid rocks, you know? We're like just ready for anything, you know? And we try to think of different ways that we can be prepared for this song or that song, and then we just show up as ready as we can be, and then, you know, we kind of figure it out on the first day of tour. We like sound check with songs that are like a little shakier than other songs, and then you know we've been playing music, and I've been playing with Scott for so long that it's we have a lot of experience of challenging ourselves, you know, mentally and musically, and getting on stage together and making it work and finding the flow, and then after that, it's just about dialing it in, just little bits, and we're listening to each other, and just little bits, little things that we can do to reinforce what the other person is doing or to play against it. And then that's kind of a beautiful part about playing every night, especially playing music that's this sparse and has this much space in it, is that you can hear every little thing and use it.
Oh, I'm just happy to be here, you know. I realize that half the time that people are going to want to talk about Neurosis, and that's why we have the opportunity to be here right now, because that band is legendarily a great band, like, and just keeps broadening its horizons and making great albums. So, you know, I just shut my mouth. When people start talking about Neurosis, that's not my thing, that's their thing. They built it from the ground up, and I'm just happy to be here, period. I don't think that we would be, like, Noah and I met recording one of my old band's records. So I don't think that we would be hanging out if I was a super fanboy or something, but I definitely own every record and listen to it. Work for them a little bit along the way too. So, home, beautiful. Miss it a little bit right now, but not much at all.
California feels like, especially where we are, it feels like a little bubble, because there's the Bay Area has been a place that has really supported creative, freaky people in a way that as soon as you get outside, you realize the rest of the world isn't this way.
Yeah.
So I think California is really special for that. We've had a complex history with Jello, being a band on Alternative Tentacles. You know, some good, some bad. You know, he's an icon in the Bay Area music scene for sure. We had records out on his record company, Alternative Tentacles. And he's got a new band, and I know he's working very hard, you know?
I guess success is being happy at anything you do.
I think that in the general term of the word success, what Neurosis started as, that wasn't even a word in our vocabulary. What we were doing, we were trying to make anti-music. Like the idea was that we're making music that will never lead to success, right? And so it's a bit ironic that we have lasted so many years, that we've reached enough people that we get to, you know, do the kinds of concerts that we do, and we all, you know, work regular jobs still, but it does feel like we have a certain level of success in terms of, you know, the number of people that we reach and the influence that we've had. So I think it's interesting that it's been enough years where just playing music that speaks some kind of truth for you has led to something that could be described as success.
So I don't know what's in the coffee here, but it's making me pretty fidgety.
I think the three of us, me and Greg and Scott, have all been really far down that dark road. It's actually more of an alleyway. And I think it's, at some point in our life, it was to be honest, I think, you know, there's a certain amount of mind expansion that can lead to creative approaches to making music or art. But there's a certain cost to that, and there's a sacrifice, and it often has to do, for me personally, it had to do with the sacrifice was caring about the people that I love, my family, things like that. I became further and further distanced myself from people until I was just in a hole by myself. And that's when I had to make a change. Both Scott and Greg were sober before I was sober. I was the last one. But it's been 6 years, and life feels really good now.
I'm still calling the Bay Area home. I'm feeling more comfortable inside my own skin, and so it's good just to be inside myself instead of trying to be someplace else. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Home. Home is where my family is. In one place, it's in the Bay Area in California, because that's where my mom is. And, but home is also where my family of neurosis is. And so even though we live in different parts of the country, when we get together to write, to record, to rehearse, to tour, to perform, whenever I'm in that room with those guys, that feels like home for me.